Okay, welcome to this new art video on how to create your very own color wheel using only 3 colors, red, blue, and yellow. Here is the finished result that you're going to end up with. So you can see that we have the yellow, red, and blue, and then the green, orange, and purple have been made by actually mixing the yellow and blue to make green, the yellow and red to make orange, and the red and the blue to make purple. So we're going to look at how we're going to do that today with some very simple tools that you probably have in your classroom. So the first tool that you're going to need is some art paper. Now this is A3 art paper. You could have A4 art paper, A5. We're going to cut this into 4 so that we have a small enough disc to work with. And I'll just do that very quickly now. So all you need to do is, like our pop-ups, you're just simply folding it over into quarters, like that, and back again for the other half. So you want to weaken the bonds of the paper by folding it like this. And by folding it back and forward like this, you're weakening the strands of, or the fibers in the paper. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold it over again. And then fold it reverse again. And then one more time, folding it back. Cool, that should be enough. I'm going to unfold it. And then on the table, I'm going to do this to demonstrate to you just in the air, but on the table what you can do is you can create a tiny little rip where that fold is. So where that fold was, you're ripping it like that. And then you can place it down on the table and using the corner, put your hand flat on one side. Actually, let's move across to the second camera. So here we are on the second camera. Here's the paper. With your hand down here, you're going to just tear gently. And as long as you keep placing your hand back a little bit further and tear gently, back a bit further, tear gently, you're pulling, with this hand, you're pulling down this way. You're not pulling out that way, you're pulling down and out. You'll get a half piece of paper. So let's just switch back. So now I've got my 2 halves. I'm going to divide those halves in half to get my quarter. So we're going to use just a quarter for the page. So I've got my 2 there. Let's see if we can do this. Bring my hands down. Done. Like that. So I'll put the other half down here. You can have a go at that. See how many papers you can destroy. Trying to use that technique. And now that I've got my 2 halves, I'm going to throw this one away. And we're left with this one. So we're going to be using this today. We're also going to be using the regular sort of art paint that you might have in your school, making sure that you've just got the yellow. We're not going to be using the orange at all, so keep your mitts off the orange. We're going to be using the red here, and we're going to be using the blue. So we're going to be using red, yellow, and blue only to make our color wheel. So that comes a bit later. What we're also going to need is a protractor or a compass. I'll talk about how to use it do it with a compass, but for this sort of thing, we're going to be using a protractor. You'll need pencil, ruler, paintbrush, and I've also got a little margarine container where to place my dirty water. I've got a very expensive little plastic cup that comes from the little ice blocks that kids get at the canteen. You can see that it's nicely used. And I'm also going to grab my bucket of water. So I've got a bucket of water for the paint later on. So you'll need these things ready for when you come to the painting. The bucket of water, the margarine container, and the paints and this thing. But that'll come further down the road. Just going to put this bucket of water back down on the ground. Boink. And we're going to come back and have a look at our paper here. So what we want to do first of all to start making our circle, whether you're using a compass or whether you're using a protractor, is you want to take your pencil and put a dot or a little plus right in the center somewhere. We don't have to measure it out particularly. It's just sort of figuring out where the center is, about there roughly. And I'm just going to put a little plus there for my protractor. Now, if you've got a compass, you can measure out as long as it's within the bounds of the paper, you can measure out sort of where that compass might actually go out to, and you're going to draw a circle using that plus as your point of reference. For a protractor, what you want to do is you want to come in and, you know what, I'm going to grab another protractor. Okay, little hunt for the protractor. I'm back with a better one. This one's a little clearer, and the reason that it is clearer is that if we have a look at the other one that I had and the one that I have here, this one's got a really nice thick line through both edges, or through both the centers, and this one only has one, so it's a little bit harder to see. So I'm going to be using this one for the video because this one ain't so good for videoing, but you could totally use this for the video, for your own one. Okay, ditch that, come back, and here we go. So the thing that I need to do is line up, and I'm just going to zoom my camera in here. Wait, in, there. Nice, so close, love it. Okay, what I need to do is line up this little plus with the very center of the protractor. So that's why I made a little plus. So it should hit right on that center. What I'm going to do is put my finger over that, and I'm going to start just rotating my pencil around like that. And I'm going to come back around and do a little bit more. And I'll just zoom out so you can see how I'm doing that. So then this is the tricky bit. I've got to come over this way and then put my pencil under and just rotate around like that. So I should theoretically have a reasonably decent circle that is absolutely centered around my little plus there. And that is pretty awesome. What we've got to do next is we're just going to put a little notch there so that we've got our first little thing. Now, this notch could be absolutely anywhere around your page. It does not matter where you put this little point. It could be anywhere. This is just our starting notch. What I'm going to do is take my ruler, and I'm simply going to rule from the point here, right there, through the center, like that. So very simple, straight through the center. Make sure that you can still see your little dot because you're going to need that in a sec. And then what we do is we take our protractor, which we still need, and we're going to find the very point where that protractor's center is going to touch this point here. So this is like the next little dot. So once we've done that, we've found our point here. We're going to make sure that our 90 degrees or whatever it is, whether you've got the 90 there, wherever this line is going and heading, it's got to hit the center there, which it does. And I'm going to draw a little notch on this side and a little notch on this side. So you've absolutely 100% got to make sure that your center point here is right on that edge where that you've drawn that line there, and it lines up exactly pointing towards your center. So then once I've done that, let's move it so it's proper. There we go. So now that I've done that, I've got two extra little ones. And this is what is going to help us to make our sixths of our circle for our color wheel. So now that we have our two little notches, I'm going to get my ruler again, and I'm going to place my pencil down and pivot around it as we have in previous videos. I'm going to make sure my ruler passes right through the center there. So right through that little plus. And here comes the siren. I'm sure you can hear that. And I'm going to draw a line. So it should go right through the center like that. And then I'm going to turn my paper around. I'm going to get my ruler again. I'm going to grab my, is that around the right way? It is around the right way. I'm going to grab my little notch thing there, put my pencil down and rotate around so it's going through the center. And then I'm going to rule a line there. And now, amazing, 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 we've got absolutely 100% a sixths. Thank you, Siren. We've got our sixths here because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's how we've made our little notches. And we made that, very interestingly, by making sure that our protractor was here and here. Now, if you've got a compass, what you want to do is put your notch, so your little point here, making sure that your pencil is lined up again with the center, and then you can just swivel your your compass around until it gets to this point and do a little notch, and then swivel it around till it gets to that point and do a little notch. So that's if you're using a compass. All right, Now that we've done that, we can get on with our painting. So I've got my yellow, my red, and my blue, and this is where we need to practice our painting skills. So I'm just going to grab the water. Water. Wow. Okay. And I'm actually going to put this water over here in front of the other container. And this is going to be my little scoop. Now, this has a little bit of a lip on it. And what I want to make sure of is that the water doesn't go past the lip. Otherwise, it's going to be too full and it's going to be really hard to control. So all I need to do is dunk this into the ice cream container and making sure that I've not overfilled it. I'm just going to get some like that. I'm going to put it here. It's going to leave a nice wet ring on my green paper. So let's come back. Here it is here. And here is my paint. We're going to start with red just because. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to put a little R here for red. We're going to put a Y here for yellow and a B here for blue, just so we remember where we're going to actually put our paint down. Now the trick with this kind of color mixing is that we don't put too much water in. I'll bring it around there so we can see it. It's really easy to overwater this. So we want to simply just put our paintbrush in a little bit there, and we can wipe off a little bit of excess water, and we want to gradually build up the amount of water that's in the red. So the idea is to turn this into a bit of a paste. We don't want to put too much that it's so watery that it ends up being very weak paint, but we don't want to put too little that it ends up simply not coming off the pigment. So here I'm working it into a bit more of a paste rather than a puddle, and then I can start putting my red down. Now that's a really good amount. I've actually never done it this nice before, so yay me for doing such a great job for my demonstration video. Usually it comes out more watery. So I'm just going to put that down there. And honestly, the less water you end up getting into this, the better, because it will mean that your paint won't run together as you're doing the other triangles for your paint. All right, so that's pretty good. Now this is where we don't want our paints to mix. So what I'm going to do is make sure that this is thoroughly tapped and all the red is taken out of it. And wipe that clean. And I'm going to go round now to my yellow. Now, if your paint ends up having a whole bunch of color in it and it's looking not watery like this, then what you want to do is simply take it, pour it into your other container. So I'm pouring this into the margarine container, which doesn't have any water in it. I'm simply pouring that out and I'm getting a fresh load of water. Now, if you're at school, you can actually use the tote trays. So I've emptied out a couple of tote trays for my students. I filled one up with water and the other one was completely empty, and one was used as our dump tote tray and the other one was used for the clean water. So you can do it that way. We'll go back to our down position here. Oh, that's kind of reflecting. Okay, now onto our yellow. Here's our yellow. So I'm going to actually rotate this around so that I'm not going to put my arm over the red, otherwise it could smudge. So here's my yellow. I'm going to use this yellow here, and I'm just going to work this again into a bit of a paste. This might take a little bit more to get going, but we'll see how we go. So there we are. That seems to be getting better. I'm just going to test it over here. A little bit watery. So I'm just going to keep smooshing around. Maybe turn my brush over and see whether doing the other side makes it any better. And keep going. Oh, that's looking pretty decent. It's still a bit watery, but we'll see how we go. Maybe I'll do 2 coats. So here we go. Here's our yellow. Ah, that's pretty decent. Make sure that you're getting a decent amount of paint onto the paper by not putting too much water onto the dry pigment when you're going to mix it. It's really important you don't get too much water into it. And this is my second attempt. So my first attempt, The other one was actually quite watery because I didn't know what I was doing. So now that I've had some practice, you're getting the much better example. So don't fret if you don't get it the first time. You can always do this a couple of times, and I even encourage you to do it a couple of times so that you end up with something that's working really nicely. Now, I'm not going to empty my little tub out this time. What I'm going to do is just go straight to my blue because the yellow is reasonably weak. So I'll bring my blue in this time, and I'm going to use this blue right here. And I'm going to just dip very slightly in, wipe it off, and start rubbing away on my blue here until it's a sort of a pasty kind of consistency. And I think that's reasonably good. No, it's a little bit watery. See how it's sort of pooling here? So I've made it too watery. So what I'm going to do is just kind of get some water out of there. You might even get a tissue if it's getting too watery and really soak up the water in the paintbrush itself as well as in the paste that you're making. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better there. I think that's feeling a bit better. I'll just go to the other side. And now I'm going to take that and I'm going to wipe it down on the paint there. Ooh, that's looking nice actually. Much better than my previous one. Pays to do it twice. A little bit watery still. Might do 2 coats later. All right, so there we go. We've got our red, green, and our blue. So this is where we're going to start mixing our colors, and I'm going to start with red and yellow because that's a good one to start with. Red and yellow make orange when we mix them together. So I'm going to turn this around to make sure that it's facing me. I'm going to take my blue out of the picture. I'm going to grab my yellow over here and my red here. And I'm going to wash out my paint now because it's getting too green and that could contaminate the color that I might end up using. The orange in my color. So I'm just going to dump that and grab a new lot of water. There we go. That's looking good. And I've washed out my brush already, so it's not going to end up contaminating the clean water. So I'm going to take my yellow and put some down. This can be a little bit watery this time because we are going to be mixing colors. That's still too light, so I really need to work that into a paste. And that doesn't mean more water, it simply means more picking up more pigment as we're circling. Okay, that's feeling better. So I'm going to put that down, and then this is where the fun begins. I'm going to grab my red, and I'm going to put some of that down. Now I put down too much red here, so what I need to do is just dilute that a bit, and I probably diluted it too much because I panicked. So I'm going to grab a tissue, and I'm just going to take out some of that from the paper. Now, because I put too much red in, I'm going to have to come back to my yellow again, but if I contaminate that like I just did, it's not going to be too good. So I'm going to wash that out, grab some yellow. Ooh, I brought some blue in from the container. And we're going to see what happens when we put some yellow back in here. And it's going to go all sort of watery. So I'll just get the tiniest little bit of red, stick that back in, and get some more yellow and try and get some more yellow pigment. So it's about working it back and forward. And I can see that I've made a little bit of a mess of this. So I'm just going to keep working it with the yellow. Okay, it's starting to turn orange, sort of going more of a browny color. So I might want to get some more yellow in there. It's starting to look better, but it's a little bit too watery still. So I really want to get, I'm going to scrunch that brush in really hard, try and get some yellow out of it. Oh, that's better. Okay, I was going too lightly. So now I've got my yellow. This is where it's going to get interesting. Tiny bit of red. A little bit more. We need far less red than we need yellow. So that's getting towards orange now. It's still quite watery. So I might have to just let it set and hope that it is going to work. I'm just going to clean my brush with my tissue. By cleaning the brush off with the tissue, we can actually pick up some of that paint because our brush is now dry. So still need more yellow. And dab of red. A little bit more red. There we go. Now we're starting to get that orange. And hopefully you do a better job than me. I'm kind of demonstrating it here on the fly, but I'm hoping that you can get a better orange than that. I know that some of my students absolutely got a better orange than this, but it's starting to look a little bit more orange than the yellow that we had. So there we go. That's starting to look a bit better. We'll go with that for now. Okay, not 100% satisfied, but it's getting there. It's at least more orange than the yellow. All right, we'll leave it there and I'll move on. So now we're going to work with the yellow and the blue. I'm going to turn this around and clean out my water. Throw that in the dirty water bucket and grab another bit of water. And I'm then going to start working that yellow again. Put a little bit more water on this time to see whether I can dilute this a bit more and get more of that pigment up. There we go. And I'm just going to do a small dab of blue, a little bit more blue. There we go, and the green's coming up. That's actually great, almost first time. So there you go. Went from taking ages with the orange and not really feeling too confident with that to getting a really decent green pretty quickly there. So there we go, there's our green. And I'll move on to the purple. And I took very little blue that time. You might have noticed that I barely touched the blue because the blue's a very intense color. So with the more intense colors like red and blue, you don't want to get too much of that when you're mixing it with yellow. So now what I'll do is I'll bring in the red and I'm going to mix some red up and do a dip of blue and we'll see what that brings. Ooh, that's a nice purple. Wow. Very lucky that I got that straight away. So all that time that I spent worrying about my orange, and all of a sudden I just did a bit of red and a little bit of blue and it gave me a really nice purple there. So I'll do some more blue, make it a little bit darker. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. I'm reasonably happy with that. Once that dries, we'll be able to maybe give it another coat to make it more intense because it feels a little bit watery. Or maybe I can mix something in. Let's see if I mix it in, what happens. Yeah, it's getting a bit stronger. Now it's going a bit too red, so I might put some more blue in. Now it's getting better. So there you have it. There is our color wheel, and we've mixed those from just the yellow, the red, and the blue. And this is how we're going to be creating color either digitally by mixing our yellows and reds together, or our blues and our reds to get purple. But it's important to understand the way that color works, because if you can understand how paint works and how you can mix different colors, then you're going to be able to use color really effectively in your designs. So poster design or advertisement design, in your infographics or anything like that. Color is a very important thing to learn because it's like a language in itself. Color communicates different emotions, different meanings, and so getting an understanding of how those colors work together and how you can create combinations of colors in poster design and things like that allow you to really create eye-catching posters that you can then convey information that people will actually want to read, or paint things that are going to be appealing because you've used colours that are next to each other on the colour wheel or opposite each other on the colour wheel. So we're going to be looking at colour wheels and things like that over the next few lessons as well. So there you go. I've got a reasonably decent colour wheel there, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to hang that up and pin it on my wall and say, wow, I made a pretty decent colour wheel. So there you go. That is colour wheels. I hope you enjoyed the video and the lesson. Definitely, I'd love to see your work, and I'm sure your teacher would really love to see you guys make your colour wheels look as vibrant as this. So hopefully that explanation and the trouble that I had with it was helpful to see how I overcame that issue with the orange, for instance, and yeah, have fun doing it. And again, make mistakes. It's okay if you learn from your mistakes to make mistakes. So like when you're in the classroom, that's the place to make lots of mistakes, as long as you're learning from it and improving with each iteration. So I'm actually much happier with this one that I've just made rather than this one. They both turned out kind of the same, but I was much happier with the purple that I was able to make. And yeah, it was just nicer. So there we go. Enjoy. I'll see you in the next video.